Today, we'll have the opportunity to deep dive into Bayer. Bayer, as most of you know, is an healthcare and agriculture conglomerate. And today, I have as a guest the pleasure to have with me Jeanne Kehren. Jeanne is SVP Digital and Commercial Innovation and Chief Innovation Officer, Pharmaceutical at Bayer. Hi, Jeanne.
Hello, Alberto. I'm very happy to discuss with you today.
Same here. And first of all, congratulations are in order. Bayer has been recognized this year, 2021, as part of corporate Startup Stars Awards as Open Innovation Challenger. And that means that you guys have done a lot of good work. And so congratulations. As you might know, the goal of corporate Startup Stars is to recognizing the corporate that are actively and effectively operating with startups and innovating through startups, and definitely Bayer is among them. So today I would like to take the opportunity to understand a bit better what Bayer is doing. As mentioned, Bayer is very, very active. Probably you can help us to understand and maybe also provide a bit landscaping in terms of what Bayer does. But based on my understanding, there is a 50-50 business between healthcare and agriculture. Obviously, you're definitely more on the healthcare side, or probably you can give us just at the beginning a short overview what Bayer is doing at an overall level.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm very happy to be selected among the Innovation Challenger, because I think it means a lot for us. And it means a lot for the recognition of the work done over years. To address your first question, Bayer is indeed dealing both with healthcare and agriculture. And in agriculture, we have a very well developed business that includes a lot of crop protection and a lot of focus on seeds, on getting also this entire business toward supporting food production and an efficient food production with more and more a vision which is integrated into their of sustainability. And I think it's a very important aspect of the recent evolution over the last 2 years of what we are doing. And it means that we are looking for innovation and for innovative solutions, which also explains the attraction or the intention to reach out into different ecosystems of innovators. The healthcare is well developed. We've got the pharmaceutical division and the consumer care division, two different markets, different types of products, with also the same thing in mind, being able to bring innovation to market. A lot of what we do in terms of partnership and open innovation is related to our main business, but today I think what was the source of our interaction with you was all the work that has been done in the aspects of digitalization, digital healthcare, how new technologies can help make healthcare better, more sustainable and more productive. So globally, at Bayer, we have a vision of a really intense interaction with the external world, with the innovators, with the startups, regardless of where we are in the conglomerate. I would speak more, of course, about the pharma aspect, but we also want to make sure we can collaborate, we can stimulate, we can, I would say, help shaping an ecosystem around us that will guide us toward our goals. Innovation does not happen in only one place. There are very different angles of view that can really help us being better at what we do and reach our goals. And you'll understand, this continuum of the company under our motto, which is health for all, hunger for none. So it's dedicated to leveraging innovation with in mind not only business, but a business that can be really sustainable and a business that is driven by a purpose.
That's great. That's very interesting. And so let's focus on mostly on the healthcare and pharma. And the first thing that I would like to ask you to help us understand is which are the different tools, different initiatives that has been developed by Bayer to interact, to engage with startups, interact with startups, find startups. So we typically use a framework trying to, certain way, as much as possible, summarize, wrap up the multiple models that fall under this buzzword that is called open innovation. And as you might see, the way of interacting with startups might involve different tools. The Fortune 500 companies, the corporate that we typically take a look at, not all of them are running all these initiatives at the same time. Some of them are specialized on a few of them. Some of them are more comprehensive set. Some of them are focused on just one or two of them. So it doesn't mean that all of them needs to be implemented. And the other characteristic is most of these initiatives are evolving over time. And so, as you can see, we have the block number one is mostly, and this is referring to what you were just saying, that is not a local initiative. Working startups mostly is a global reach. And so typically corporates do have a presence in the major ecosystems, clusters, Silicon Valley, Israel, other emerging clusters, and also based on the specificity of the business might change. Then there's block number two that is quite strange to label entrepreneurship as part of the open innovation, but we are seeing a trend that more and more corporates are opening the entrepreneurship program to external contributors, sometimes also startups. And so that's why we started to include them as part of the open innovation range of activities. And there is a set of tools to work with early stage companies. The old-fashioned way was called corporate accelerators. They are still strong and present, but they are evolving. They're evolving mostly into venture builder format, startup studio, innovation labs, so different models, but mostly try to understand how corporates do work with early stage solutions. And then there is venture client that mostly refer to partnership, commercial, strategic with startups, typically the most mature one, what we call scale-ups. And then there might be the investment play through a CVC or off balance. And sometimes, if there is love, typically is represented by an M&A play, and that might happen typically eventually. In the US, typically is a very, very frequent and widespread initiative. A company like Google's acquire one startup per week. In Europe, typically companies are definitely more cautious on moving that way. And so typically we're talking about an handful of acquisition per year, or sometimes also over a longer period. So this is the different set of initiative. Again, might be useful, Jeanne, to use this framework just to help us to understand the multiple ways Bayer is engaging the startup ecosystem, and what you believe are the most effective one, what are the trends also inside you. That might be very useful for us to understand.
Absolutely. So basically, we've got our usual activities of, I would say, what I would call the more traditional business development and licensing activities, which are run by division and really looking at early company, it may be a bit more than startups actually, when it comes to the BD&L activities. Traditionally, as you know, pharma is working a lot with ecosystems of biotechs, early companies, innovators out, and it's true for also the agricultural branch. Now, it's a bit special when you look into the more, I would say, the less mature environment. Since 2013, we started to have a lot of discussions on how things could be shaped differently, stimulating people inside, having a lot of discussion on intrapreneurship with mostly initiatives being driven from what we were calling at the time corporate innovation. At this point in time, it was pretty clear that we had a lot of people who had the willingness or the impetus to innovate and be catalyzers. However, we really thought that we needed to have this view from the outside and leverage the ecosystem. So what we put in place was initially a program of building the ecosystem, catalyzing the ecosystem through different activities. The first one, it's what we call G4A, initially meant mostly focusing on digital transformation, on helping people, getting an initial support, entrepreneurs to get an initial support from the corporate world, a mix of money, coaching, consultations, guidances. Why that? Because we thought that posting challenges of questions we think need to be addressed in our business was essential, but we didn't want to be the only ones to try to answer them, and we post them outside. It really triggered a lot of interest, and progressively, year over year, we supported close to 150 companies with different stages of maturity, some extremely early, some maturing with us, and some more advanced ones, always with a mix of, okay, we are not there to play investment only. We are there to help them understanding better the healthcare as ecosystem and the pain points, to give them access to key stakeholders inside the company, outside of the company. So really a supporter role to get those companies to mature. Some of them have been progressing very well. Some of them are really still, incubating and sometimes pivoting a bit. Most of them are still alive, which I think pleads really for the quality of the work that was done year over year. So that was the pharma, and really there is a strong focus on digital. We, in addition, systematically connect for more advanced discussions. And we came to the point where we established a strong co-development with one of the digital healthcare player called IDS OneDrop. And it was another way of getting the innovation and the digital innovation close to our business, which is mixing and matching into a collaboration framework, how we can get those two worlds to communicate better. And it's a complicated task, but it's, for us, we use it as a flagship of how we can get two very different worlds to work together. And it has been also a key of many learnings on getting this innovation concept, this not predatory interaction between a large corporation and an early company. So can go on. We have been, there is a corporate, I would say, transverse activity to really go into potential disruption. Yeah. We want to be able to embark on what we think could be definitively a big disruption. And this is managed mostly by the activities of LEAPS. Mm-hmm. And LEAPS has been active for a very long time now, with very impressive successes and a very impressive track of deals made. LEAPS act as an investor, mm-hmm. sometimes an initial investor, also potentially following up, leading additional rounds of financing. And it does so for all the domains, agriculture, but also healthcare. We've got investments in really transformative technologies. It can be about, capturing carbon. It can be for agriculture. It can be about coming into disruptive technology to replace grafts for transplant patients. It can be also about, again, digital health. We've got a significant investment in HUMA, that we have been, following up on was guidance, content, strategic discussions, leading another round of investment, and so on. It's typically one of those examples. And it helps us really to have a look and an access to potential disruption, still letting them live their life and being fully entrepreneurial in their mindset. Most recently, because of our focus in integrated care, in digital healthcare, we also partnered with 7Wire. It's a film that is stimulating the, also the ecosystem in healthcare, founded by the founders of Livongo, so Glenn Tolman and Lee Shapiro. And we are working with them, and we have our minority access into some of the opportunities that they are supporting and selecting. Again, we have those different levels, more directly on content and stimulating super early or stages that are closer to our concerns in terms of healthcare. That's G4A. We've got the corporate arm, and we have, I would say, a bit of an additional field of opportunity through the collaboration with 7Wire. That's, I would say, the big picture, but I will not go into the details of our additional interactions, which are more really directly BD&L. I think in terms of really early startups, that's where we are today.
Let me ask you a couple of more questions about some of these tools. I think one is the CDC arm. You mentioned, again, it looks like you started the journey years ago. And when the journey has started might be interesting, and what has been the most important milestone. And then regarding the CDC, what has been the process, or when has been set up? If you know what is the structure of the fund, is a closed fund, is rather than being you're investing off balance. Can you give us some more details?
So starting the journey, it started indeed years ago. It started indeed years ago with something what was much more, I would say, really close, with a direct view, and potentially at the time a very naive view on the digital health. And we started that with those annual events and annual challenges, posting challenges, getting applications, having a big award ceremony like the one you're organizing now, was things that were really focused on supporting brands. And then so we realized it was great and could help us in our digitalization journey, digitalizing our own business. Progressively, we realized that the real value of the potential disruption in healthcare wouldn't be coming from there, but a slightly orthogonal way of doing things. And so we continued, but then with a bigger focus on, tackling the pain points of either our own business or the healthcare system in general. Talking about process, we still proceed with a lot of communication that we extended in many geographies, not only Europe, but also US, also China, having a lot of applications all over the globe. We tend to stubbornly try to focus on capturing innovation in Europe, because there is a potential for innovation that may not be boosted enough right now by lack of traction, lack of contact, lack of network, lack of investments. And we think there is a lot of value to be extracted from this ecosystem. But we are pretty much trying to tap into different geographies and get different people applying. So we have still our annual cycle, and we still select startups to be supported, very early stage, a bit advanced, and then really in growth phase. That's how it goes. Now, for the venture activities, what we are doing with LIPS is more a classical investor role, where a lot of the opportunities are funneled through either our direct activities in contact with the entrepreneurs, or going directly to LIPS, because LIPS is starting to be really on the map, really visible for a lot of the innovators. And it's a more classical assessment on where we want to go, on what is really considered as disruptive, what really fits with our business strategy. And for the last one, the collaboration we've got with Glenn and Lee, it's really much more trusting them as partners. So they drive the process, they help us select, and we contribute through a side fund.
Okay. Got it. And the CVC is how much is how large is the portfolio? How many companies have you invested thus far? Ballpark figures? How much you're investing per year? Some metrics that you have on the top of your head?
7-8 companies.
Okay. Per year. Okay. Typically, the stage of investment is early stage or a bit more later stage, Series A, Series B, or even earlier?
We've done, I would say, a lot of A and Bs.
Okay.
And then we continue supporting them later on.
To the follow-up investments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. Interesting. And then you, as you mentioned, now you are LP in a four-party fund that is 7Y, right? That is. Mm-hmm. And what's the reason for investing is covering some technology areas that you're not able to develop internally. What has been the opportunity to? Because there's always an interesting discussion is when a corporate decide if to have their own vehicle or sometime piggybacking some four-party vehicles that give them obviously more variety of access, broader deal flow, but that's more difficult to be managed. And so it's interesting also to understanding the reason behind this choice that most of the time are very, very idiosyncratic, but a super interesting point.
Okay, well, the overall intention is to be able to have enough coverage of a domain which is currently exploding. Digital health is attracting a lot of investors, a lot of innovators. We see a gigantic amount of startups coming up with solutions, with ideas, and we don't think we are smart enough alone to cover it all, understand it all, and that's why we really want to collaborate. Why are we doing that? It's also because we've got an intention to develop a significant play in digital health. And that's why you've got this range of things, from a very intense collaboration with OneDrop, plus exploring the ecosystem, stimulating it, sometimes creating it. And we use the different vehicles to provide us a portfolio of opportunities where we could end up assembling something that will become a significant business for Bayer going forward. That's the idea.
No, I think
the other idea is to make sure we've got a foot in the door for the most disruptive technologies before they become unaffordable if they prove themselves. And that's the second strategic reason.
Yeah, that's a very, very good topic, actually. I'm having this conversation with many general partner of CVCs, and most of the time come out also this feeling that you are investing into something that might be strategic for the companies, and later down the way the company may make an M&A move. And it was quite interesting that some CVC has been blamed by the mothership that they have contributed to increase the price of the target company because you have done that growth. And on the other hand, it's the only way that you have the opportunity to follow up the opportunity from inside. So I'd like to take your 2 cents here because it's quite straightforward, but it's a very, very, most of the time, tough situation when you're in.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes we're in a position where we help company to grow and their value to grow. And then, of course, if the value grows, the final step to M&A is going to be more painful.
Yeah.
But at one point, if you already have a portfolio, you may want to make some bets where some of those did develop, did grow, and you may want to cash out to favor another investment after.
Yeah.
The problem is that if you decide that it's bad or it's potentially counterproductive to help them grow, you won't be at the table when the key discussion happens.
Correct.
And I don't know how much you're familiar with the field of healthcare and pharma and development of the recent big breakthrough technologies. But if you have been following a bit, you'll see for example, the CAR T cell has been, those cells you modify to attack cancer. This has been developing into a completely unaffordable hyperinflation of market cap. You've got deals reaching out easily for something which is super early, the 2-digit billions valuation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not already, at least in part, into that play, and you just go out at the last minute with your checkbook, this is going to be painful.
Yes.
We create the opportunity of access for us. We create the opportunity for access as something which does not lead us to make gigantic bets on something which is only halfway de-risked. So it's a reflection on how much risk we put on different investments, but it's also a reflection on, I would say, being fair and really support the development of those companies, because we are convinced that there's only that much creativity we can get and that much innovation we can get out of our internal play, and we need that, and we need to have people growing, and we need to have also positive experience for those entrepreneurs and startup CEO to see that we are a fair and productive partner. Otherwise, they can go and look somewhere else and discuss with somebody else. We've got a common interest, we need to create that common interest and that common positive experience as a partner when discussing with the different startups. And I think it's a key point. And yes, it may lead, and we hope so, to an increase in their valuation.
That means that you're on the right path, and that means that there is some strategic value to be pursued. Because one thing that I believe that established corporates have hard time to understand, first of all, at least in our experience, is the value of time. Because most of the time, there is always the temptation to say, okay, this is something that we can do inside. It's easy, and then it takes forever, and they miss the opportunity window. While having something that is developed externally in a professional way by a third party, it can definitely go faster. And then, as you mentioned, you have a strategic optionality to try to internalize when and if there is a strong strategic alignment. But again, if there is a strong strategic alignment, I think the real difference is not the price you pay, but is if you have the opportunity to take over. And that is, I believe, the real value of being part of this company since the beginning. And as you mentioned, you are creating strategic optionality that has a big value. And you're taking small bets at the beginning.
Exactly. And I think also when you mentioned that, this tendency to say we can do it internally. Probably no, because what we are trying, probably not what we are trying to achieve. What we are trying to achieve is really to reach out to things that are not exactly what we do internally, to connected domains, but that are not identical. Whether we like it or not, each and every company of a certain scale has a dominant business model, which leads to a dominant thinking, and we have our own silos of innovation, our own field where we are very good at. I am absolutely convinced that it's at the interfaces between different domains that the biggest disruption and value creating disruptions are going to happen. Which means we need to stretch ourselves to have a back and forth influx between what is our core and what can be connected to the core. I'm working a lot, obviously, on digital, so I'm going to use that as an example, which is technology and digital are great to accelerate, remove friction, gain efficiencies. We have been talking about digital health for years and years. It's starting to really ramp up, but we need to have the digital world connect with the healthcare world, with the entire chain from the patient, the physician, the payers. And we need to have digital also integrating the content, the view, and the knowledge. If we don't create this stickiness point, it's not going to work, and the disruption we expect is not going to happen. And it's true for a lot of things. I think the next big things are going to be coming from interfaces, biology, technology, digital, and healthcare, but really talking together. And disruptions coming from different areas of biology. It can be the pharma side, it can be also the agri side. Trying to find those interface points, because that's where we can get an enrichment of the two sides together much more efficiently than trying to continue in our separated silos.
Yeah, so true. I totally agree. And despite it's a very, very common good sense, is very, most of the time I see it's very hard to be put in place, because again, the temptation to be the domain expert is something that might try to kill innovation. Particularly when you are moving from Horizon 1, that's something that is just an extension of what you guys are already doing, and so you are really mastering the domain, while you, as you mentioned, you go cross multiple domains when sometimes you really need to have a totally different perspective that is difficult to be developed internally without being biased by the existing domain culture, business model you were referring to. Let me ask you the other $1 billion question. That is, when you guys are looking at a startup, particularly from an investment perspective, and not only, you're looking mostly at the strategic value or the financial value? Again, which is the dominant? Is more strategic or more financial, the reason to invest? What you're looking at? I know that is a tricky question, so but it's
okay. I've been doing forecasting for the last 20 years. especially on innovative molecules or concepts or businesses, there is a certain standard deviation on whatever you can forecast.
Yes.
So the safe bet is actually more to focus on what is the value to be created by the concept or the company. Who is going to be the customer, and what is the problem solved? So the strategic thinking around those things is essential. We need to understand what's the purpose, what's the value created for a customer or for the user or for the patient. And from there, after, you can start having a kind of a very rough evaluation of what the financial framework can be. But you can have the most beautiful financial modeling if you're not convinced that there is a potential for value creation in terms of value creation for the people supposed to receive the product or the service at the end. It's going to stay a model. So a lot on the strategy, a lot on the purpose, a lot on the agility also of the founders on understanding different problematics. And from them, you can derive something financial.
Correct. Good. That's interesting. Final question you already mentioned, but might be good to hear from you is, from your perspective, what are the next 2-3 big things that is about to happen in the world of health? Since we were talking about forecasting, and then what is your...
I think we already clearly said which bet we think are the most important one for the future as a company, because we already invested in cell therapy, gene therapy. Still a lot of big things to happen in oncology. And the last one is, sorry, for my top 3, I would say cell therapy, gene therapy, and digital health. Those are going to be really becoming very important players in meeting the unmet needs of the patients, of also the physicians, and the entire healthcare system.
Can you name a couple of example of startups that you believe might be relevant for your scenario vision? I know that is still on the making.
No, we actually did acquire something which it's not a startup, but it's a more mature company called Aspire.
Okay.
We started with a leaps investment on Blue Rock cell therapy based on stem cells that finally we acquired.
Okay.
So there are already 2 very visible, tangible bets and commitment into that domain. And I told you we are in digital health working with OneDrop as a form of a collaboration.
That's my perfect. Okay, so I think it's been very, very useful also for help our audience understand your approach. Again, corporates are approaching open innovation from multiple angle perspectives, so that's why it's so important to have such conversation and to be able also to understand your approach, understand the reason that are moving and the direction that you are taking. And that's definitely might also help startups to better understand what and how should expect from potential collaboration with a company at the level of Bayer that, as shown by our Corporate Startup Stars Awards, is definitely committed in working in innovation and innovating with third-party players. That I believe, as this also come out pretty clearly from this conversation, is the only way forward. Again, whatever is the size of the company, nobody can innovate alone, particularly when we are fronting so many waves of disruption. And these waves of disruption, I'm quoting you, are happening in the interception of different domains. And whatever you are the domain leader of something, you are missing the other parts. And this is the way to reach them out. So thank you, Jeanne, for this conversation. Again, congratulations for your well-deserved awards. And let's keep the conversation open. Also, we'll touch base in probably in the coming months to understand what has been the progress and what has been the evolution in your model.
Thank you very much, Alberto. And it was really nice discussing with you today, and looking forward to the big ceremony.